Bikeway Pedestrian Committee. And it's 30 seconds before 6 o'clock. It's a new year, and we get to decide who we want to chair the committee and vice chair the committee. So I'd like to open up nominations for chair and vice chair. We can also take volunteers.
I'd like to nominate Mike for chair and Pat for assistant chair.
I'd second that.
You okay with that?
Mike, you okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Pat, are you
I'm
okay with
okay.
that?
Okay.
Okay, let's, so we have a motion on the table to,
We need a second.
I'll second
a
it.
second, okay?
Oh, you did.
Quickly.
So Mike DeBlasi for chair and Pat Fisher for vice chair. Let's all vote on that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, congratulations.
And you could switch, give him the gavel. Yeah.
Okay, so this will be yours.
Don't we have to
Your
wait?
first meeting.
No, it's-
Okay,
You remember how we did it at Planning Commission?
Greatness is being thrust upon me, isn't it? Okay, well then,
Right now.
thanks to my committee members. So moving on, after we've done that, is the approval of the minutes from the December 2018 meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move that the minutes of December 13th of the Keizer Traffic Safety Bikeways and Pedestrian Committee be approved as written.
Second.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. We have a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes from December 2018, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Okay, moving on.
we do have a lot of people in our audience today. We also have a television audience on Channel 23. If, did any of our members of the audience want to speak tonight?
Okay, we'll pull up, are you Dan Fisher back there? Or okay, so for the first ones who want to speak about something that's not on the agenda, we have Matt Lawyer and Roger Corser. We'll have Roger come up first.
I'm assuming I sit. My name is Roger Corser. I live on Adam Court Northeast, and most of the people here behind me live on the same place. And last month, Joe Tillman made a proposal on my behalf, because I wasn't able to be here, about a possible four-way stop at Adam Court, Brooks Avenue, Thorman, and Mambrin. It's a four-way intersection. That better? The reason that we want this is because the street at that intersection makes a turn. And when you're stopped at the stop sign, you cannot see to the right if it's daytime. At nighttime, you see the lights coming. But during the daytime, it is a very scary thing to try to get out of our cul-de-sac, to go straight or to make a left. Some of our folks don't even try to make a left because you can't see the oncoming traffic. I read the minutes from last month. I found that you guys had suggested possibly doing a traffic calming device. And the one thing that I wanted to mention about that is, because of the short line of sight, even if the cars are going at the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, we still run a risk of being hit as we try to get out of our cul-de-sac, because the line of sight is so short. So that was our big concern. I've lived there for almost 30 years, and for 30 years, it's trying to get out of there is pretty scary. The other thing that would like to ask for in the way of signage is, we are a little cul-de-sac, and if you were to look at the map, you'll see that Brooks comes up to that intersection, and then our little court goes on, and it turns a little bit. You can't tell, if you're not familiar with the area, you cannot tell that we're not an extenuation of Brooks and there's some place to go. And we get a lot more traffic than our 9 houses account for people that are trying to figure out where they're trying to go, not realizing that our cul-de-sac is literally a cul-de-sac and it's not a through road. So if we could get a dead end sign or not a through street sign, it would enhance the safety of our neighborhood.
Instead of a 4-way stop sign?
No, as well as. Or, I mean, they're not, instead of, I understand that the 4-way stop is quite the thing to try to do. Whether people stop or not, well, actually, the people that are coming down Brooks, they have to stop. It's a stop sign there. Whether it's a 4-way stop or not, they're still not going to know that what they're pulling into is a little cul-de-sac and not a continuation of Brooks. One of the problems is that Brooks, years ago, Brooks went what we would think of as across the parkway and is extended on into Salem. And so when people are looking at addresses, and I know this because I did this from census work, I had some addresses on Brooks I could never find until I finally realized that if I go across the parkway and go down, Brooks continues on. And so I think that is part of the confusion for folks is they're looking for an address that isn't actually on that stretch of road.
Roger?
Hi,
Has the group talked with the neighborhood association and all that?
I am with the neighborhood association.
Okay, good.
And that's how Joe found out about it in the first place, is because he's also on that. And I brought that up to him in October, and they were going to bring it to you.
Okay, good. I'm not as familiar with your neighborhood. However, my son lived on Thurman, just past Brooks, and he talked about some of those problems. But you're really only asking for 2 stop signs, right?
Yes, because there's already 2 there.
Yeah, okay.
So instead of a 2-way stop, it'd be a 4-way stop. And whether that would be moving the sign from Greenwood, moving the 4-way from Greenwood to Adam and Brooks, or having a 3rd one on that street, I don't know what would be better, but.
Is that because, I mean, I guess that's the issue with how that was designed originally, and that the outlet of your cul-de-sac comes onto kind of the inside of the curve? Am I envisioning it right?
What had originally happened was that Thorman would come up and start making that curve, and then it stopped. And Brooks made a left-hand turn, and our little Adam Court, our subdivision is built in 1979. Manbrin did not go past River Road at that point. It goes west of River Road, and it didn't come and join up. And so it was just Thorman and Brooks. When they put in that the Eden subdivision that we are in, that's when they punched Manbrin through and made this a 4-way intersection.
So is one of the issues there that there's parking on the street, and so you can't see around the parked cars?
No. The parking on the street is not fun, but it doesn't necessarily affect that. It's just, if you'd like, I've got maps here that might show better,
Okay,
give you
I'm
an
looking
idea.
at one here on,
I don't know that I made enough, but.
We can share.
Yeah, and I know exactly what you're talking about, so I don't need one. And you've got the,
I've got
Okay.
Google.
yeah, so is the problem, I know you said it's turning left from your court. Is it
Left
not-
or right, either, left, is
Is-
because we are at the
Right.
apex of a curve, if you
Right,
will.
so right's going right, maybe a little bit easier, but still not as easy as, say, coming out of Brooks.
I can't speak for the folks behind me, but I can tell you that there's many times that I've made a left or a right, look in my mirror, and all of a sudden there's a car there that I didn't know was coming.
Okay.
The cars coming from the left, unless they blew through the stop sign at Greenwood, don't have a whole lot of time to pick up speed to go past the 25-mile-an-hour spot. The folks coming from River Road and Cherry Avenue area, that's a longer stretch, and so it's really easy to go faster there once you get past the congestion at the Cherrywood Apartments and the parking there. But that isn't usually an issue for us that I've noticed. It's just that you can't see because of the way that the road curves.
I would like to make an observation, because I know the area, that at least the Cherry Manbrin intersection coming on to Manbrin, going towards the cul-de-sac, is very wide, so it gives people more of a sense of that they can go faster. And I think long-term, that would be something we need to work on too. But does anyone on the committee know, is it our role to make well, not just to make a recommendation to staff, or do we make a recommendation to the council? How does that work to the council?
I would
Okay.
think we might ask staff if they have previous, discussion or analysis of this area, or we could offer to go out on site and observe it with staff to kind of come up with a recommendation.
I understand the situation, and and you feel it's unsafe pulling out. I did talk to Bill, the head of Public Works, about a possible four-way stop, and he was opposed to adding 2 stop signs due to the one right there at Greenwood. Looking into it, I will take his recommendation moving forward that won't happen. I understand cars pulling through from Brooks and, feeling that your street is a thoroughfare to go through. Suggest we could put a no-through sign to help with that, and we'd put that on your side there, not on the stop sign if you're headed north on Brooks, but that will alleviate some of the, some of the
That
issues.
would alleviate the traffic, the extra traffic that we get. The one thing that I was looking at, and I kind of, looking at this going, I don't think they would want to put a stop sign right next to a stop sign. I get that. But if you were to go down Greenwood and stop at that stop sign, you have a very clear view both to the left and to the right. So if that turned into not being a four-way there and just got moved down, it would be a safer intersection than the one that we are dealing with.
Pat first.
Yeah, I guess this is a route that I've kind of had in, the back of my mind as a possible bike boulevard type of route that we would consider when we get around to mapping that thing. So I hesitate to add stop signs in a route that might be that, and would hope we could lean to find a way to improve the visibility and make sure this traffic is moving slowly but smoothly through there. So that's why I was wondering what other members have thought of. I think it seems like this is the same corner we talked about with a different complaint that was brought to us about the parked cars, and we talked about whether we could do any restriping or other kind of traffic slowing types of treatments in that area, but that was kind of tabled for that time being.
Well, we did talk about that, this area, and from what I sensed, the consensus was removing cars from that part of Manbrin would only cause people to drive faster.
Yeah, and I guess my question had come up with whether they could stripe stripe it in such a way that the cars that are going through there are going in, to the center of the street and not like cutting around the curve and so forth.
Yeah. Hirsch first.
I'm just going to, Roger brought up a point about the history on Greenwood and why there's stop signs there. Historically, Greenwood was used quite heavily. Back, I guess, when I was growing up here in Keizer, it wasn't at the slow residential street. So that's one reason that they were put at that point. Your suggestion was just to move them a different,
Yeah, just to, and I can see why it would be, because before this subdivision went in, that was the road to get to this area, that particular area of town. But when the subdivision went in '79, it opened up the whole thing, and now Greenwood is not terribly trafficked. And so if we could just move the sign from Greenwood to one block, I don't know, it's north or west, it's kind of hard to tell there, to that intersection.
thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Mike, isn't, Thorman's considered a feeder street as opposed to, is that correct?
I think it's a collector.
Collector street as opposed, so it's not in the same category as all the other streets in that neighborhood. That's meant to be carrying everybody, I'm gonna use the word rapidly, loosely, but out of that whole neighborhood. That's the main road out. So we're talking about taking the main road and stopping it. Is that correct?
Slowing it down.
Well, slowing it down, but stopping is definitely slowing it down.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, current speed limit's 25, is that
It is,
correct?
yeah.
Yes.
Mike, just out of curiosity, what is the cost of a sign and installing it to the city? How much does that cost? Roughly.
About $100. And we're talking for the no-through.
I'm talking about the, well, I guess any
Stop
sign,
signs
but
are
for the stop
$40 and then, you know, an hour labor and whatnot. So, well, either way, whether it's a stop sign or a no-through sign. And then the price of a thermo stop bar to be applied by a striping company is a couple of $100. So you'd probably be into it $1,000 adding a couple stop signs, as opposed to, you know, $90 for the no-through.
That includes maintenance in your
Well,
cost?
I mean,
That's just installation cost, no maintenance.
yeah, no maintenance.
Okay. Officer Leday, do you have any data on that street at all?
I mean, I haven't done a recent scan or anything else like that. I don't recall any crashes or anything else as far as it being put on the spot. I haven't run any scans or anything else in that area. Off the top of my head, with close to 27 years here, most of it working traffic, I can honestly say I don't really recall any crash issues that we've had in that particular area.
Any close calls that were reported?
Very few.
We've
Okay.
got a member of the audience. There are several comments.
Yeah, Roger, if you want to allow. And so please state your name and your city of residence.
My name is Deanna Gregory, and I live in Keizer on Adam Court. We moved there 3.5 years ago, and the first summer that we moved there, it was 2015, and there was a ginormous crash that summer. A car was coming down Manbrin and got to that corner. I'm not sure what the reasoning was, if he was going too fast, if there was something in the way, and he swerved, and it was huge. Went through somebody's yard, hit a great big boulder in the park area that's there. I am a stay-at-home mom, so I see that traffic all day long at different times of the day, and I can tell you that every single day I see close calls, some with cars, some with pedestrians. There is a grade school and a middle school that are not too far away, and kids walk through that area and up Brooks, and I see kids get hit almost every day. It almost happens to them every day. It is a very dangerous corner. I will go a good mile out of my way to take a right-hand turn versus taking a left-hand turn, because I've almost been hit so many times taking a left-hand turn. Additionally, when I am coming home and I'm coming up Manbrin turning left onto Adam Court, I've almost been hit several times because there's oncoming traffic from Thorman that I don't see until I'm already turning. And it's not because they're going too fast or I'm going too slow. It's because that curve is so, I don't know the right word, steep maybe. It's just, there's too much curve and there's houses and sidewalk in the way and you cannot see somebody until they are right there. But like I said, I see it at all different times of the day, every single day, and there are very close calls every day at that intersection.
Is it possible to maybe put a mirror there, a parabolic mirror, so you could see around the corner?
Have to slow down for that. It's a
I'm
long curve,
I'm
it's a
not
blind
sure
curve.
that there's any place to put that.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure there would be, and that would be fine for people coming out of the court.
Coming out of Adams
But
Court.
people on Thorman going to Manbrin wouldn't,
And
they'd be going too fast.
like Roger was saying, with moving the stop sign, this intersection at Greenwood is a straight stretch both directions. Greenwood is straight and Thorman is straight at that point. And so if you were to take the stop signs from, on the Thorman side of Greenwood and just move those down to the Adam and Brooks side of Thorman, then you're not increasing the number of stop signs along that road, but you're putting them at an area that is a lot more dangerous than where they're currently at.
And Mike, you said that Bill was opposed to putting another one, but did he say anything about moving?
And that wasn't a question I asked, so that's a very good point you have right there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
There was a point that was brought up that with Claggett and Weddle, not too far from there, and I know Brooks, in my meanderings on the bike through, and having a daughter that taught at Weddle, there are kids that are going down. Brooks is a popular area, and the apartments and such, and I don't think there's a boundary change with the school district next year for schools. That may have some merit in having stop sign crosswalk right there. Might have some merit. I don't know if.
Mr. Chairman, do we have anybody else to speak on this issue? It looks like we do.
Yeah. Sure. Please come up and state your name and your city of residence.
All right. I am Sarah Adams. I'm in Adam Court, Northeast, just a couple doors down from her. And my daughter actually has, at about 7 in the morning, a bus stop right there. And they stop at that corner. Picking her up, they come from Thorman, which is really confusing. You got Thorman, Manbrin, Brooks, and Adam Court, and that's just one mess of street names. But I see it all the time. We see the kids. We kind of know what time, if the bus is late, by the kids, and they're coming from the apartments. And I mean, we see probably 15, 20 kids walking, and they have to cross the street. And there's been close calls. It's dark. Yeah, it's about 7 o'clock. It's dark. And I actually have purposely put my son's car seat on my left side. I have a 11-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 5-year-old. I feel old. And we've been there since they were, well, our oldest was 3, so we've been there about 10 years or so. And I always was putting my car seat on the left side, so that way I knew if I got hit, that side would, my right side would take it, and my left side would have a better shot of survival. And it's one of those that you make that choice. You're gonna go turn left, and you don't look back. You just go. And there's been so many times that I just go, and I look in my rear view mirror to see, did I get close? And there's a car right on me. And as far as the through street goes, yeah, having extra traffic, I can see that Sometimes that's the unfortunate consequence of being in a longer cul-de-sac. The problem is our cul-de-sac is like a bent thermometer, and we're at the back bulb, like way back, and our fence shares the fence line to those wonderful apartments. And, it's almost like a blind turn there too, that the cars don't realize sometimes that they've gone down the wrong street until they get to about our mailboxes, which is the, this is Manbrin, Thorman, Brooks, that kind of thing. And then they turn, and then it curves in. And the mailboxes are at the bulb of the thermometer, the top of it. And they don't realize that they've gone to a wrong street many times until they get to that spot. And then they just whip it around because they get irritated, I can imagine, I guess. The problem is my kids are playing out there. And we have our yard, and it's the blessings of being in a cul-de-sac. But they don't really play in the street much, but we do have a basketball hoop. They like to scooter around, so they do the circle, and then they cross that street. And there's been many times they're on the sidewalk, and the cars aren't even caring, and they just whip it around. A dead end would help. I think a lot of it is that they just accidentally come down, and it would help them not come down the street. But yeah, I moved my car seat, and that was a big thing. And now I have my 2 kids sitting, and so I have a choice. If I get hit, which kid is going to take that side? And that's not something I want to deal with.
Question?
Yes, Dan.
Sarah, you said the school bus that's coming to pick up your kids comes down Thorman,
Yes.
heading south,
Yes.
and when they drop them off after school,
other direction.
they're coming up from Manbrin up that way.
And there's been some calls where the cars don't want to stop, and
But
she has
there's
to cross that
It's a
street.
normal school bus stop there at your corner.
Yes.
Okay, now you
Yes.
said there were like 15 kids every day walking.
Oh, yeah, at
Wh-
least.
Which street are they walking on?
They're
On
coming, no, they're coming from the apartments that are on, I think it's Manbrin at that point. They're coming from those big apartment
So
complexes.
they're walking down Manbrin.
They're walking down, and they're crossing, they're on, what would that be, the north side of the street?
Well, they're
My geography is bad.
crossing over
Yes,
to the
they're
your
crossing
side of the
over
street.
to Brooks, and it's dark, and cars don't see them. And the parking thing would be great. Oh, wonderful. The parking thing would be great, like if they're parking on the street. That is somewhat of a problem, but I don't think, because there's times there's no cars parked there, and I still can't see, and they can't see me. And I think that if you were to put stripes to like, oh, this is where you should be in the middle of the street, to be honest, that would just, in my opinion, tell cars, hey, you can drive fast because there's street markings. Just kind of like at Dearborn, where you don't realize it's a 25-mile-an-hour street because it's got a yellow line and the white lines, and yeah, so that's just from the stay-at-home young kid mom perspective.
Well, there are some more people that are on the list. I don't know if they feel like they need to talk to add anything different or new that we haven't heard.
He's gotten hit almost running, my husband. He's come home and said many times he runs, and he goes across the street to get to Brooks and make a loop there, and he's almost gotten hit many times. So, yeah.
I have a comment. I would, my personal opinion, I would leave the stop sign where it is on Thorman or
Greenwood and Thorman.
Greenwood and Thorman, to not change that intersection. And then I would add a stop sign where you want it, rather than trying to move it. And then I also like the idea of no thoroughfare or dead end, just to eliminate some of that traffic.
Mr. Chairman? Do we have anybody else to speak on this?
Well, at some point.
Okay, I would like to make and I don't know if it should be a motion or a suggestion. So we've got this information, we've got some pretty good ideas, and that some of us, one or two of us should go with Mike and or Bill, or both, and look at it and talk a little bit about it, bring it back to our next meeting, and then make a decision, one, you know, what we're gonna do about it. And we've got enough ideas out here to make a decision at that meeting and forward it to the city council.
I also have something to add. I forgot, this is another, it's our life, so it's normal to us, but the wonderful police department has had to come get or find our son many times. Our son's Taylor Adams, the one that runs. You've had meetings about him. He's got severe autism, and so he has no street safety. Now, granted, you know, when he gets out, we're 20 seconds behind him because you learn, never let them out of your sight. But many times he's crossed the road and things like that. And I think a stop sign would be helpful for that fact that, you know, we don't want him to be out and running, but if it means cars would have to slow down and stop, he would have a chance of, I'm not gonna get hit. Or when he's in the cul-de-sac, he loves to run in the cul-de-sac, and he doesn't understand car safety. So I forgot, but that's just a part of our life that's been normal for a good 12 years or so. So that adds a little bit of it to us, but.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Anyway, does that need to be a motion, or?
I think it'd probably be a good idea when it's on the record better.
Okay, I'll make a motion that two of us volunteer to meet with Mike and Bill, or at least, I guess, since Bill was the decision maker, also partially. In the next couple weeks, go down and look at that intersection to discuss the things that we've talked about here, and he could always look at it on TV. And then at the next meeting, we make a decision, one way or the other, and if we make a decision to have something not done, we'll let you know. If we have, what decision we make inform you, right?
Yes.
So you know all these people?
Well, I
Some
know
of 'em?
Roger.
Okay, well, that's good. That's all you need, right? And it'll be on TV, so you could watch it live
Yeah,
next
live.
month.
All right.
I make that as a motion.
I second that. That makes sense to do. It gets some more data.
Okay, so we have a motion to have 2 committee members join city staff to do a reconnaissance trip at the intersection and come up with potential solutions that we will vote on at the next committee meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say, oh, I said aye too. All opposed, nay? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
We did.
Yeah,
Aye.
we're all for it.
And I would volunteer
Okay,
to help out with that, too.
Um,
I mean, I'm certainly inclined to do more rather than nothing in a situation like this, rather to be proactive rather than to have
You-
something happen and then wish we had done something.
Who else would like to, we need another
Well,
committee member.
I'm
to-
happy to do it because I literally live 2 doors away from
There you go.
that intersection, so.
Okay.
Before we move on, I would like to ask Kathy, does transit go down Member and Thurman?
I don't think so.
Currently, no.
Okay.
Because it
Okay.
goes down to Cherry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cherry,
The number 9 goes.
Dearborn, or Chimawa.
Yeah, but at the bank.
The last big change.
Well,
No, it doesn't come down there,
doesn't stop there.
not the transit.
Is there, well, we'll know next month with the budget changes if they're,
How are we
yeah,
going to
the-
arrange this meeting?
Okay.
How will we arrange the meeting with Bill and Mike?
One of you probably needs to call him, or both of you go visit him, or whatever, figure out what his schedule is.
Joe and I can coordinate after the meeting.
Okay. All right, thank you. So the next person we have is Matt. Matt, sorry, I would have had you come up sooner. I didn't know it was a whole group at one. on one
No
topic.
apologies. It's always awesome when we get other people out here talking about stuff. For the record, Matt Lawyer, Keizer resident, also member of the Parks Advisory Board. Congratulations, Chair DeBlasi and Vice Chair Fisher, on your new titles. Yeah, so I'm here today kind of as a citizen, but on behalf sort of the Parks Advisory Board to discuss what I hope would become a joint venture between our committee and your committee to look at the safe routes to parks. And Wayne's also on the Parks Board with me, and we talked about it a little bit early in the winter. Unfortunately, it was one of those deals where we didn't have anything planned out for it, so we didn't meet the time frame to apply for it this year. I know that the park staff has looked at an accessibility and ADA study for most of the parks, and that study should be wrapping up or is wrapped up. I think that mainly addresses paths, specifically inside of the assets throughout the city, and not necessarily those paths to the parks. So with that in mind, I don't know how this would come together, but I just wanted to gauge this committee's feeling on it before I take it back to the Parks Board with Wayne and say, yeah, this is something we really want to kind of jump both feet into the deep end with. I don't know that there's a tremendous amount of money. There's going to be some research that's going to have to be done. I think if we have overlapping scope of what the safe routes to parks is with what's already been done, it may not necessarily be viable and or necessary, but I think that's one of those things we just kind of have to look at a little bit. But given the nature of this committee, I thought it was important to come here sort of as a representative, but not on behalf of the Parks Board, and ask the question of this committee if this is something we wanted to enter into, at least to determine feasibility and find out what we need to do.
Matt, could you tell me, in that report, is the type of paths they're talking, or the materials, is it going to be bark paths? Is it going to be gravel? Has that even been discussed?
So most of the paths that have been replaced this year, they've done, gosh, I think paths at 4 or 5 parks this year. They've all been asphalt. Typically, they're an overlay over existing paths, where paths
to
are
level them.
currently, what's that?
To level them.
Well, to level them, to just repair them, because a lot of the paths that have been done in Keizer historically have been done by volunteers, which is awesome, but it doesn't necessarily bring the engineering piece into it, and also doesn't take into account the actual ADA requirements associated with paths. I think the standards have changed since most of the paths have been put in. In terms of like especially like at Claggett Creek. Well, Claggett Creek's one of them, but Keizer Rapids, where there are some natural trails and things like that, that's been a topic of discussion that we've had. There are purposeful trails that are not what you would consider ADA accessible because they're more designed to be that natural sort of hiking type thing. But there is opportunities specifically at Keizer Rapids to do additional paved trails. So there's kind of a combination, specifically as it relates to the ones that have been done. They've all been asphalt, generally kind of an overlay. I don't know that we've gone to base on many. I think there's only like 2 that we actually went to base on, just to kind of reestablish a solid base on that. So, but I can get more details if this committee wishes.
Okay.
I guess I want to circle back because I think Mr. Lawyer made the distinction initially that the Parks Board has been looking at what the opportunities are within the parks, but I definitely think it is an opportunity and within the interest of this committee to figure out where we can improve access to a park. And
Right.
as you said, there may be ADA barriers where somebody makes it difficult with a stroller or a wheelchair to get to that park without walking in the street. So I'd be very interested in working with the Parks Board on that, like looking at certain distance, certain radius from the parks and see where we have gaps in the facilities, whether a piece of missing sidewalk or the sidewalk ramps are missing, or other kind of smaller things like that that would help.
If we look seriously at the Safe Routes to Park grant program and take a look at what they expect us to do, that's what I would expect us to do, to take a look at that carefully, gather some general information. At that point in time, we'd be calling you on the phone saying, hey, and going over the grant application itself, I would suspect would outline what we need to do on the safe routes to the park.
Yeah, I mean, I did look at the application. It's not a tremendous amount of detail. So it's a planning grant, right? So they're going to go in and they're going to do the study. So they're going to look at the current infrastructure and kind of make some assumptions based off of that to draw up the scope. So it's not kind of a one size fits all. I think that would be inappropriate for that type of grant because not all the parks are made the same.
Right.
Just within our own system, we have neighborhood parks. We've got drive-to parks, then we've got the regional parks, and so your accessibility there is completely different. We actually have, I think it's in Northview, where you have to walk down a set of stairs and just pray that you don't slip or otherwise. But those stairs are being replaced, I think, next year. Either way, so yeah.
But with your committee, you have the sense of the potential use of existing and potential use, and where the park users are coming, which direction they're most likely to be coming from to utilize those parks?
Not a clue. Again, well, it's one of those things that, to be perfectly honest with you, because a lot of them are neighborhood parks, there are many access points from around the neighborhood depending on what park you're talking about. And again, they're so unique. If you talk about the river parks, there's pretty much only one access point unless you go through people's property. If you're talking about like Bob Newton, there's many access points. Claggett, there's quite a few via the neighborhoods, but also from Dearborn and Shamawa. So, do we have numbers to quantify? If X amount of people are coming down 13th to get to Shamawa to go to Claggett? No, I don't think we have those numbers.
I just wanted to kind of reiterate what my two colleagues have said. It's a safe routes to parks kind of grant, and I definitely want to be involved. And it's all modes, alternative modes, walking, pushing, cycling. There might be gaps in bike facilities to a park that we could work on. Now, I'm on the regional safe routes to school committee, so I have access to some of their information.
Okay.
So.
And I don't know all the details of the grant application, but I would like to make sure that we include school grounds, parks.
Those are not within the scope of the city. Those are all owned by the school district, as far as I understand.
But I'm for the safe routes to parks, if we could include that in our discussion, yeah. Because people use school grounds, parks, fields, and such for recreation.
And as we can use the safe routes to school monies, and which we're talking about with Cummings Elementary and Kennedy for this next year, yeah, I think we can talk about, because there's always a park close to a school.
Right.
But so I'm not sure what you're asking for, but I'd like to say yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think to answer your question, I'm just gauging the interest, right? Because I don't want to, I believe that the Parks Board's going to take this on, but because this is sort of in your all's wheelhouse, I didn't want to step on anybody's toes if you guys were planning on doing it. I think Joe actually brought this up when he was on the Parks Board or something similar. It might have just been the safe routes to schools, but this is in your wheelhouse. I'm not by any stretch of imagination a traffic safety expert. Wayne has kindly brought it up a couple times, and so I just wanted to formally bring it to this committee to see, again, as a representative of the Parks Board, but not on behalf of the Parks Board, if this is something we wanted to kind of enter into to start working on as a collaborative effort.
Yes.
I'd say yes.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I think anything we can do to increase the number of safe sidewalks and bicycling areas in Keizer, we're all behind that.
Yeah,
Safe
I
routes to
agree.
schools, safe routes to parks, safe routes to work, anything, so.
Well, and not to take away, the staff has already done a tremendous job this year. Our park staff has done a huge amount on our paths. It's already made a huge difference. So I think, agreed, 100%, Kathy. I think anytime we can make it better is good. So.
I don't know if this would have to happen. I don't know if we can do it, but Debbie might know at some point when we're getting near that application completion process, have a joint parks TSBP meeting where we can hammer out some of the details.
I would suggest, that's a great idea, I'm all for it, but when the grants come out to the cities, groups that got it for this year, see what they did.
Yeah, and my plan is to do the research early, and then either myself or Wayne or Mike or whatever. I work with pretty much everybody up here.
So we have an inside connection already.
Right. No, I got it.
We're in good shape.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Is there anyone else on the sign-up sheet that has a issue beyond what we've discussed so far? Okay, well, you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you'd like, you're excused.
Thank you
for coming.
very, very much.
For your input.
Mike, if I can make one last thing, since you're, I assume all of you are from the Adams Court area, please come to the Southeast Keizer Neighborhood Association on February 7th. And it is, well, it's here in this building, but it's usually over in one of the conference rooms. We need more people.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, the next issue on our agenda is the Parkway bike path signage.
Well,
Still tabled,
it's still tabled. Can we?
getting closer.
Yeah, can we meet with Mike after the meeting and see when he might be open to go, because do some checking of the areas?
Why don't you just shoot me an email, Hirsch, and some times that work for you, and I'll make something work, and we can
Yeah,
talk about it
Pat
and go
and I'll
from there.
just figure out what might be, we're not thinking next week, but maybe the following week. And we're trying to pick a sunny day for you and all that.
That will work just fine.
We just, with the holidays, and for me, Mary Ann had the knee replacement surgery December 3rd, so she's doing great. I mean, she's on the bike already, so.
Okay, well then, thank you. We'll move on to the projects for 2019 items. One thing that would be a quick project. So last night at the Planning Commission, I brought up for projects for that as moving the city to adopting the NACDO street standards. I don't think we officially have AASHTO or any other one, just we have standards. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with NACDO. I think you are. The North American City Transportation Officials.
Sounds right.
And so at the meeting, it was brought up that we would bring up the transportation plan. Like,
Well, you've brought up AASHTO a couple of times, and just a point on that is we do follow the AASHTO standards, and everything we get through Marion County, the signs and how our roads are done and the stop bars and all that, those are all following those AASHTO standards. And back in the day when Peterson's Engineering was involved with putting together our design standards, those were based on AASHTO standards. So
Okay.
I think you had asked me before last month, do we follow that? And we do, so I'm not sure what more you're asking about those standards.
so what I'm asking is that we would now switch over to the NACDO street standards. So
Those are different than the ones they're
They are
following
different.
now.
So NACDO being city transportation officials, street design is more geared towards an urban environment, solely an urban environment versus AASHTO, which they look at both city, urban, and highway and try to sometimes meld the two.
They're largely based on highway because they came out of, what, the 40s and 50s, almost solely being highways, and they've been slowly adopting and coming more towards, or, incorporating city or urban type stuff.
Yeah.
But the NACDO side, going the other direction, I guess we might call it, building from the urban side, because that's where their specialty was. And so that's why it is a better standard, if not necessarily to just say it's the one, but we certainly should supplement, and I would say prefer, the standards coming from them over those from a highway, since, well, River Road is kind of a highway right now, and I think we need to change the view of that.
So Debbie brought to my attention as I came in tonight that Bill told her that going through the planning commission, route would not be a very good way to address this. It'd be better through this committee, making the recommendation to city council to then move the ball forward on
Good.
that.
I don't, this is make me sound stupid. I don't really know what you're talking about. Because you're saying we have some standards we're using and they're different than the ones that you're proposing,
Yes.
or the two of you may be proposing, or that even exist. And you'd like us to recommend that. I can't recommend anything because I don't understand what the difference is. Now, I just, for how, and how long, is that an issue we want to discuss this year? Yeah. Do I want to do it any farther than what you've done tonight? No. I mean, I don't want to go into that issue tonight. I think we need to put that on there. Somebody needs to make an argument to me about, first off, explain what the two are. How are they different, and why is this better for me? Or
Well,
the
and that's
people I
what,
know.
and that's what I was getting at, was we're not going to make the decision tonight. This would just be one of our items to work on for 2019.
That's fine.
Yeah, because I would be curious also to see some examples of where the two, yeah, especially in the areas of bicycle and pedestrian design, you know, are there, is one of them more demanding than the other in certain areas?
I would also like to know, not cities back east, but cities here in Oregon, maybe Salem, Portland, cities our size, what are they using?
I think it's
And
going to be
why?
a major educational effort. I mean, not major, but, you know, we have to educate ourselves, and then in order to make any changes,
Right.
educate folks in Keizer about why we think it's important.
So that would be one project for 2019 that I recommend we put on the list.
Be good learning for all of us.
Mr. Chair or the committee, so do you want to look at these projects that were on the minutes, and do I need to put any of them on agenda? How do you propose to complete these tasks, I guess is what I'm asking.
You mean put them on the agenda for every month,
Yeah,
and then we
uh-huh.
always look at what we can talk? I think what would probably be best would be to have, at the end, have it on the agenda, and at say, the next meeting, we would decide what we want to have on the following month.
So it's
I mean,
like on the planning commission, where at one
Yeah.
time we had them listed at the bottom
Mm-hmm.
after all the orders of business, and that way you could have those in front of you every time?
Yes.
That
Well,
sounds good.
I did,
It worked on
it
the
seemed to
planning
me that
commission.
seems like we end up pushing a lot of things from one month to the next on that, but I thought we might, do we want to look at that list and like you say, if you step forward as a key person or a champion for the review of NACTO versus AASHTO standards, and somebody else may want to step forward as the point person for one of the other projects on the list. If we have projects on there that somebody can't pursue for a while, I don't know if we want to list them month after month or not. Question to the group.
Well, Mike's already brought up, been on the planning commission, and that information was always provided, and with the realization that we might not get to one or more because city council wants us to do something else or other priority changes, but it's still there reminding us that, you know, it might go into the next year, but it's there, or it might solve itself.
We can only hope.
Yep, yeah.
Wayne, did you have something to say?
No, it's a big vacuum up here. Sorry.
Okay, well.
Oh, so I think you need, do we need a motion to put this on our
I
project
don't think
plan?
I don't know, Debbie, do we need to put 'em-
Projects for
Too
2019?
many individual motions.
We can just add those.
Yeah.
You know, granted, but you really would, because I bring this up on my notes anyway, the things that we said we were going to talk about. And sometimes I don't get to them, and it gets put off. But I like them at the bottom of the agenda. Just, you don't care if it's even in a paragraph form. I mean, just commas between them. A list of things we said we were going to talk about, and that's our problem if we don't talk about them. And one of us, you know, should be doing it. So, yeah, I'd like to get these out on the table.
Perhaps once you get them on the agenda at the bottom,
Yes.
you can discuss them and maybe some people will volunteer and we can move them up onto the actual numbered
Yeah,
agenda
they
at
could
that
bring up-
time.
They could go up with the bikeway signage issues.
Right. Okay.
Been on the agenda for 4 months.
Yeah, that might get bumped down
2 years.
to the bullet list at the
Okay,
bottom.
I would, then, in addition to whatever the standards you were talking about, I would like to make sure we talk again about, if I repeat, if there's something you wanted to talk about, just jump in. Safe routes to schools, we need to do that process again. If we need to apply again, follow that up. I think we've already agreed we're going to take a look seriously at the safe routes to parks, see what we need to do and make sure we're ahead of the deadlines. We have the promotion of during the year, and I don't know if there's anything to discuss about it. I want to make sure that we continue to distribute, our process of getting bike helmets to kids at the various events within Keizer where we provide that service to the community. With promoting bike skills events in addition to just the helmets. So we've done a few of them in the past in the years, homes, schools, Boys and Girls Club, things like that. Just almost done here. I want to make sure we need to make as a group, at least I'm going to propose more specifically, make recommendations to the city council regarding budget areas that we see. For example, if I know a specific place that needs to be fixed, one choice is I can call Bill on the phone or Mike on the phone and say, I want you to fix this, and they can do whatever they want with it. Or I can bring it before the committee, and the committee can say, yeah, we've all looked at this, and this is a reasonable thing that needs to be taken care of, and since it costs money, we'd like you to do it. And they can say, the city can then look at that and say, take it to the budget committee, throw it out, whatever the city council wants to do with it. But we might see some, I'm going to show you improve, there's 2 things that really need to be done in this year's budget. And the budget needs to be done in the next 2, by March. So we need, that would be in my mind, a high priority. And then we were doing bike-friendly routes in Keizer. Wayne did a lot. I think you did some on the website. We need to continue doing that. We haven't done anything lately, but we did before, so.
Joe, did you have any projects?
Not projects, no.
Okay. Pat?
The 2 that were kind of on my mind, if hopefully I get through the bike path one here, is the assessment of bike parking at schools, and I think Wayne, you maybe expressed interest in looking at that with me. So I would kind of like to pursue that one in the coming year. And the other one I think that caught my attention really is the sort of the citywide missing links or quick fix kind of things where we might all kind of fan out in our own neighborhoods and look for
Missing link.
whether that's missing pieces of sidewalk or
No, that's
opportunities
what I'm talking about,
to provide a bicycle and pedestrian connection from to improve the connectivity between neighborhoods.
And not to
And
go,
and actually the access to parks and schools would be really a major component of that also.
not to go on a big tangent, but I brought up yesterday at the planning commission as well, in this case, the new rebuild on Thorman and Lawless, that house, and why there's no sidewalk there. And my bringing it up was to try and fill that loophole. Well, there's apparently some, and I can't quite remember the name, but it's basically a fairness is what we can ask property owners and developers. And because there's limited sidewalks in that area,
There are none.
yeah, there's some on Thorman, some on Manbrin, but there's definitely a gap right there. It would be too much of it would be unfair to ask a property owner to do one section of sidewalk when the city hasn't done curbs or anything like that.
But, okay, along that line then, and I'm not sure whether, I guess it's this group, because we're talking about not automobile transportation, is that if we expand and have developments occurring in a little bit larger scale than individual houses, but neighborhoods going in, that the ability to move through those neighborhoods on a bike and by foot are different than by car. And right now, we've only paid attention to cars, so you can get in groups of cul-de-sacs that you want to go 1 block over, and you have to go 8 blocks to get there on foot, because the planners didn't give us an 8-foot easement between 2 houses. And I'm not sure, I don't even know where that goes, but that's just my thought. And I'd like us to look at that. Is there something we can recommend to the planning commission or whoever makes policy, that when we do expand the city of Keizer, if for some reason we do, that we have those things in place this time? Because right now, we build all these neighborhoods with no way to get between them. There's no connection at all. So I'd like to at least look at that this year. Okay. So I don't know what you'd call it, policy. Actually, it has to do with the urban growth boundary and planning
Interconnectedness,
policies regarding,
Yeah, it's
so
really
there's a design.
impacts,
walkable, bikeable communities.
you know,
Okay.
it's not whether they're urban growth or expansion, it's when there is development, even if it's infill.
okay. That's what I'd like to see us talk about.
Connectivity within neighborhoods.
Oh, good, I like that.
Well, and, you know, kind of related to that, I would like to see our committee at least get to review the bike and maybe ped infrastructure going into new, especially commercial development where they put bike parking, and make sure that it's, you know, we have our codes that say where it should be and all, but sometimes following the code is not necessarily the best
We could look.
location within a development.
So bicycle and pedestrian in commercial development?
Infrastructure, yeah,
And
review.
review for
design
on
review, yeah.
developments.
So we did that out here at McLeod and Shamawa. Remember when we were looking at that sidewalk continuing to the new apartment building? I mean, we did get a chance to look at that, and I wonder, you know, I think that was, and I think we made some suggestions that they incorporated, and I think that's a great idea. If we can look at
The,
plans.
the
for
building code
redevelopment.
for bikes, specifically bikes, was changed about 2 years ago. That includes that bike facilities must be within 50 feet of the door, which is a great improvement, but and we're only talking about new development. When there's a remodel, it's like that house, it doesn't apply. However, you got a good point. Our new development on River Road in Chamawa with the human being and all that, everybody goes to the coffee shop. Where's the bike rack?
Yeah.
Way down by the sandwich shop. So I see bikes locked to their signs. Now, if we'd had a little bit of feedback, we could have said, why don't you kind of split, instead of all those there, put a couple down here, and they'd meet the code.
Okay. So we want to look at that policy,
Yeah.
codes, and codes.
Okay. Hirsch, did you have anything?
Well, I'm trying to follow up on something David said about trying to get some bike skills events and more helmet events. We did, what, 2, 3 last year? 3. Well, I'm meeting with Keizer United on Monday, and they kind of mentioned to me that they would like to do a bike skills fair, and working with one of the churches or whatever for a site. And we have all the equipment, all that ready to go. And also, last month, just before Christmas break, Marianne and I did a first ever live Facebook video at Keizer Elementary after school. The principal, the vice principal were doing a sleepover there as part of a contest that the kids did. And we did came in and did about 20-minute video on bike safety and why you wear a helmet. So that was only viewable by parents and kids from Keizer Elementary. But it got through. You guys were asked to do it, and they pointed over to me. So we're trying to do a little more, and Keizer Unite. Yeah. We just can't plop it down. It's nice to have an event, part of it. I'm doing one at Harrod Elementary, June 7th, and the Edgewater Partners, or the Salem Leadership, is helping put that one on, but we just come in, do the bike skills, and they have all sorts of events. Doing one, I think they're going to plan it at Scott Elementary for all the East Salem schools, again, part of Salem Leadership, and we'll have Salem Police there doing that. So if we can get something going here, we might tap you guys. Yeah, the bike cops would have some fun. But this is our very first meeting, so on Monday.
I have something, not so much for projects for 2019, but follow up on 2018. Pat, you contacted Lee Ferguson, Leanne.
Oh, yeah, I was going to report that on,
Oh, okay,
on
okay.
our
Yeah,
committee
I'll
member
just wait then.
reports.
I was just, checking the status of our grant applications is where I was going with that, but that can wait. I don't have any additional project ideas.
And I think I've spoken my piece, so Kathy?
The only thing I've thought of is if we want to try to get another bike repair station, like maybe out at Keizer Rapids Park, and I could check with Chariots again and see if they have some funds for that. Is that something we might want to look at?
How close does Chariots get to the park, Keizer Rapids Park?
I think River Road.
No, they go down Windsor Island.
Windsor Island Road?
Okay, Windsor Island.
I was just curious how close
Well,
they get.
trip choice doesn't have to be tied directly to the bike route.
No.
I mean, the bus routes.
No.
There's one other thing that I'm going to be, and this kind of for McNary High School and that bike rack, may tap transit or trip choice for maybe $1 or $2.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So that's another project.
Good.
Eric has not gotten back to me after the Christmas break, but as they proceed with their building, the picture I took of that bike rack, the day we went over there were 40 bikes.
Their little flimsy bike rack that they have there?
That's the same bike rack that was there when I graduated in 1972 from McNary.
Maybe some of the bikes are the same one.
Yeah, my old one's still parked there. No.
I'm curious what the typical scenario is with the people that have been observed using the bike repair station. Do they arrive there pushing their bike up there to fix it, or something that they ride to?
What?
Because that to me, that would kind of inform where we want to do the next one. So if it's at Keizer Rapids Park, your bike has to be in good enough shape to actually get there.
That's
But
right.
whereas if it was like at Claggett Park, it might be something people can walk their
true.
bike
Right,
to
right,
and fix it
right.
and then go on their way.
Here's the thing that Tim Wood, his office is right there, and he's given me some feedback. He said both kids and adults are using it. Generally, they do, walk it over and put it up and work on it. He's seen people work on the bike for an hour. We've had no vandalism. The bikes, the things are scratched up, but that's because people are using them. We've had nothing stolen. So it was a good location, at least to this point. And it's mostly kids or younger.
Okay.
So then maybe the thing would be to look around and see where a good spot, like maybe the south end of Claggett Creek Park.
Well,
Or, except that's so close to here. I'm thinking someplace closer to Weddell and,
well, maybe the Southeast Neighborhood Association might
Yeah.
give us some ideas.
I can give you two thoughts right now.
Okay, there you go.
So this is just an item we could.
Southeast Keizer Community Center, which is the Mennonite church, so I don't know
Oh,
if
yeah.
there's issues with that. Or across the street at the senior center, even though it's maybe not
Edge of
what you
town,
think
yeah.
of,
Well, that's my ideas.
Good.
might be more acceptable.
Now, we have two in Keizer right now.
Right.
One at the transit center and one right here.
One way north, one in the middle, and maybe one southeast would be good.
I think that's a good issue.
Okay.
Another.
All right, well, that's a hefty list
Yep.
for 2019. I hope they add months to it. Okay, so we'll move on to committee member input.
Okay. Since it's already gone longer and I came late, which I apologize for, I had an anecdote which I'll bypass and go straight to why what it brought me to is that our committee name is already really long and we're already leaving out transit, which ought to be in there also. It's kind of an irrelevancy, but maybe we should think about finding a shorter name for ourselves. And transportation, safety, basic.
And she was just here.
Was it two different committees that were combined at
Yes,
some point?
Bikeways, which I was on,
I was.
and you were on.
But it's so much more and it's already too long, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
think about that. Yeah.
Just something to kind of ponder, I guess. I think that's the only thing that's actually worth talking about. Well, I take it back. Active Transportation Summit coming up April 25th and 26th. If anyone wants to try and go to it, I'm thinking about doing that myself. I've never
Isn't
been
that
to it.
January?
April 25th, 26th.
Where is
Portland or
it?
Salem?
Portland, Oregon Zoo.
Okay. Let me know.
That's all I have.
I had two issues. One, I brought it up to the Parks Board the other night, but the two issues. One is I'd like to present to you next meeting. I'm going to talk to Bill Lawyer and Mike. I have a personal issue with Keizer Road from Verda up to Ridge, is it Drive or Ridge Road?
Drive.
Anyway, there's a new apartment building, and they put sidewalks in, which is right in the middle of that stretch of Keizer Road. But from the apartment building to Verda goes along the church
Oh,
property, and which is there before whatever. And that's a horrible stretch. It's dangerous, and I'm going to present all this to you with measurements next week and ask you to vote one way or the other to bring this to the city council, because I think it needs to be fixed, and I need to get a price on that so that we can
Or
recommend.
a sidewalk?
Sidewalk, bike lane, and clean up that stretch to make it good, so I'll get the rest of that. Second issue is, came up since the last meeting. Ridge Road goes in front of is there 9 baseball diamonds? 10? How many, wherever there are up there? Baseball fields?
11.
The use of Ridge Road there's a bike lane on Ridge Road that goes all the way up from Keizer, up through Ridge Road, across to the baseball diamonds, then back down to Chemawa Road.
Yeah.
The baseball parking at the parking lot for the baseball diamonds is totally eroded and taken away the bike lane. Okay, so if you're coming up and using the bike lane, which I don't know how much it's used, but probably not very much, it just disappears and forces you out into the middle of the road. Okay, the parking lot's owned by the city, and the city's responsible for the pavement and the bike lane, not the parks department or whoever runs it. So I'd want to present that and talk about how much footage that is and why that's so dangerous. Plus, I'm going to ask the police department, I'm not going to ask them why they never gave tickets up there, but people are parking in the bike lane, and I want to know that if I complained about that, something's wrong up there. People are parking, and I can barely get my truck through during a baseball game.
How wide is the white line? It makes a real difference.
Not really. It's a
Whether
narrow
it's
bike lane.
Whether it's a shoulder or a bike lane.
It's a bike lane. We've already talked to Bill Lawyer
It's
about
probably
this.
just a shoulder.
I don't think
And,
it's not a bike lane, it's not
It-
wide enough.
well, it was a bike lane when they put it in, but right now it's gone altogether. Where the parking lot. I'm really just talking about a stretch there of 3 driveways that have been totally demolished by people parking in there, and the parking lot not being used.
And there is a park.
Also, a bunch of things. Anyway, I'm going to bring that up to you next meeting, ask you to make a decision about that also.
Could you send an email to me? That way we'll get it on the agenda for
Yeah.
next meeting? Okay. And in that vein about the Keizer Verda, Joe, you'll have to help me. The lady's name from the committee, the Southeast Neighborhood Association, who works at the Grass Hut.
No, Sherry got.
Yeah, Godfrey, yeah.
Yeah.
She had brought up to me the concern that coming out of Keizer, going onto Verda, or people turning into Keizer from Verda, you have the traffic circle, and she said that it can be quite unsafe because people are stopped to turn left, but they can't turn because cars are coming north on Verda, but you got cars coming from the traffic circle, and there's a lot of,
Well, we know, okay.
so,
Well, put that part of the next week.
okay. Pat?
Okay, I attended the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee meeting on December 15th, and they were in the process of narrowing down the list of the Safe Routes to School applications, and at that meeting, they started off with, basically, they were already at a 200% list and a 150% list, and they were deciding on which of those projects would advance onto the list. Basically, I guess you'd call it 100% list, which represents just only the number of projects that fits the amount of money that's available. It was, I was interested in what they were doing because they really weren't talking about the merits of specific projects. They were mainly talking about the geographic distribution of the projects. Did they like the geographic distribution of and whether any of the applicants should be allowed to have more than one project. They had a limit of $2 million, but they were saying, well, does that mean, $2 million and Portland can have 2 of them at $2 million or 1 of them at $2 million? So the projects as they arrived to the committee on that day had received a technical score from ODOT staff and in some cases a site visit by ODOT staff. And then that was how this 150% list, say, was formed. I had the list, which if you're interested, you can look at, that shows, I guess, the types of things that they were scoring them on, but, some of the big factors were in the application packet originally, like whether the traffic volume and speed of the street and the crash history along the street, and then again whether it's a Title. All of them, I think, competing were Title I schools, but the traffic considerations were a pretty high factor in the technical scoring. Neither of the Keizer projects was on either the 150% or the 200% list, so we are somewhere further down the list, and we're not even, neither of our projects was mentioned in the 2 hours that I observed the meeting. But I did send an email to Leanne Ferguson, the ODOT staff, the program manager from ODOT on that, to ask if the technical scores were available for all the projects so we could see, where we were in relation to the ones that were actually being sort of talked about that day. So her answer, which I think I forwarded, Wayne, to you, was that as far as they're concerned, no project is out of the running at this point, but I guess they hadn't really publicized all the technical scores, so I couldn't find them on the website, and I guess they're not on the website at this moment. But the next critical things that are coming up for this is that on January 24th, that will be when basically the proposed slate of project is being presented to the Oregon Transportation Commission. If the Transportation Commission approve that slate of projects, then I guess not long after January 24th, all the applicants will receive the results. There's also some future meetings coming up. Let's see, so the advisory committee will also be meeting on February 12th, May 29th, July 9, and October 21. Those are their meeting dates for the calendar year. And so I think that those are dates that we may, kind of want to have on our radar, because they'll discuss, I'm sure, whether they're going to go out with a call for projects on the non-infrastructure side or on the project development and readiness, which was another separate area that they were thinking of having a call for projects in. Let's see. So I guess that's my report, and if anybody has any questions, fire away.
Was this before or after the Secretary of State's report on this?
I think one of you mentioned that last time. I think it is after, and I haven't read that report, but I am curious to see what they said about the process, because I guess I found it was so much different than the programs that I was involved in when I was doing that line of work, that the committee members were not talking about what I would call the merits of the individual projects. In other words, they were just directed to consider them as a group, rather than saying, hey, what about this project from,
Keizer.
Grants Pass or Keizer or whatever? Do we think that that it's a good bang for the buck? They weren't really doing the bang for the buck thing. They were just talking, or the technical merit. Well, that project's a good idea, but the design is not going to accomplish the purpose. So they were not having that type of discussion about individual projects.
Okay. Harsh?
Just trying to get some bike skills fairs going this next year in the Salem Keizer area. Is the main thing that I've been doing for the last month and for this next month. And we'll do our bike path signage.
I've been working on a bike event. I'm planning a bike ride. It's Father's Day, June 16th. There's going to be a ride called the 321 Family Fun Ride for KDCCP. Kiwanis KDCCP, Kiwanis Dorenbecher Children Cancer Program. Okay? And so the ride has been defined. You can ride it if you want to. It's 8 miles or 15 miles. You don't even have to ride. You could be a ghost rider.
Ghost rider.
You can be a ghost rider. Ghost riders, there's no registration fee. All you have to do is complete a list of donors and collect the money and send it in. And that's another way to help raise money for Dorenbecher Children's Cancer Program. I've got flyers, and if anyone wants to take them. So the ride is June 16th, Father's Day. It's a Sunday. Short ride, 8 to 15 miles. We're looking for riders. We're looking for ghost riders that can find a bunch of donators. Okay. So there's a lot of people who, maybe they can't ride a bike anymore, but they still want to help out, and it's still related to cycling. Got a couple more. Anybody else want? And I got more at home. Kiwanis Dornbecker Children's Cancer Program, KDCCP. And the ride's called, the short version is Salem 321 Family Fun Ride. The long version is 3 parks, 2 bridges, 1 cause, family fun ride for KDCCP.
All right, well, that sounds
It's going to be in Riverfront Park, Wallace Marine Park, and we'll go across the new Peter Courtney Bridge, and we'll be going into Minto Brown Park. Yeah. It's all on paved trails, and it connects
It's really a good family ride area.
24 miles of trails.
So will the trails be closed to the public those days, or?
I have, with Salem, I've got permits already for park usage fees. And they're only supposed to allow 1 event per day. And we have that day.
All right, so.
So that's what I've been working on, creating a new ride. The website is live. It went live yesterday. It's listed on the information here. You're welcome to gather donations and sign up as a ghost rider. You can sign up your kids. There's a family rate. So.
Okay.
Good deal.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Could you discuss, I wrote those letters, emails, and emailed them to
Oh,
you.
I still have them, and I have not.
And I suggested you forward those to Debbie.
I still have them, and I've got some more input from Michael, and I just haven't combined them yet. And so-
Debbie, is that okay if we forward them to you and you forward them to the Parks Commission, the planning?
I think they should come from you all.
Okay, then can you
I can send you.
send Wayne
Uh-huh.
the email addresses?
Well, yes, and with their email, yes. That'd be helpful. Yeah, I know parks, but I don't, I didn't really know who to send it to.
Okay, thanks.
My only input is, I don't know if any of you or all of you have seen that show, Adam Ruins Everything. Have you ever heard of it? Heard of it. So it's basically he takes a topic every episode and kind of, it's like Mythbusters, but for the stories behind why things happen, not how things work. And one he talks is about cars, and it's very interesting in just how cars have become so prevalent in our society, and it puts it in a quicker, more concise language than I'm apt to do. So if you can ever watch it, I don't know if it's on YouTube. I watched it on one of the streaming channels, and share it with other folks.
Adam ruins everything.
Mm-hmm. What's it called? Adam Ruins everything. Yeah, yeah, because he basically takes your ideas of how things are and why they are, and he tells them, no, that's wrong. It's really because of this. So, Kathy, you have any input?
Well, I watched the last 2 meetings on Keizer TV since I wasn't here, and so nice to be with the group again. But I noticed a discussion on garbage cans in Bikeways again, and my husband came home the other day and said, I couldn't get through the bike lane, there were garbage cans there, and if I got out in the street, I would have got hit by a car, and he was all upset, and I said, I know, we talk about it all the time, but it is still, it's a real issue, I know, and we've talked about what to do about it, but, and then also the regional transportation system plan is being revised, the 4-year plan for the region transportation projects that will use federal money, and Keizer's on there. I mean, the list is this long, and Keizer's here and here and here and here. Almost all the money is for, except the great big projects, bike and sidewalk, bike lanes and sidewalks. So that folds in very nicely with what we're planning to work on, I think, over the next year. So maybe there'll be even some more money, we can actually get something done.
All right. Great, thank you. So, Mike, any report?
So a while back, Dave, you had wanted me to get together with Bill and figure out some of our 2019 Public Works projects that we have going on. And I have a rough draft going here that I can ramble through here really quickly if you guys are interested in hearing about it. First, we have the four-way signalized full movement intersection on Keizer Station Boulevard at the entrance to the Transit Center. That will start construction this spring, and the project must be completed by September 2019. Pre-construction meetings coming up this month, and this is a transit project, but it's going to affect all of us because it's in our town and it's Keizer Station Boulevard, so just bring that to your attention. With that, there will be an additional left turn for Keizer Station Boulevard for southbound turning eastbound onto Shamawa Northeast, so you're on Keizer Station Boulevard southbound. We'll add a second left turn lane onto Shamawa to the overpass for the Parkway and I-5 north and south. So that'll be tied in with the intersection. Moving on, westbound Lock Haven, just past Whitaker Middle School. There'll be a dedicated right turn only onto 14th northbound. So there'll be a widening there, and you'll be able to turn and head northbound on 14th and head to Gufser School and the Gufser neighborhood there. And that's going to start this summer. Well, kids are in summer vacation, so that's coming up here shortly. ADA ramp pedestrian button upgrades along River Road from the south city limits to Shamawa. So that's a pretty big project. We are planning to pave River Road from the south city limits to Shamawa coming up this summer, and tying in prior to that, we need to update the ADA ramps all along that whole space. So that's a pretty big project, so that goes out to bid. That's already out to bid, and bids will be back in February for work to begin. Once that work's taken care of with those new ADA ramps along River Road, that will then tie into the River Road paving. So we're hoping we can the ramps will be taken care of and we'll be able to take care of the paving this summer. So
What percentage of the corners are not ADA?
a lot.
A lot?
Most of them.
I'll just say that, Dave.
Okay.
So
Can I also interrupt you? And may I assume the engineering for all this has already happened and it's just on the shelf?
it's all happened. I just got a stack of plans about like that shoved in my mailbox. I just noticed coming in today. So yeah.
Okay.
So yep. And then moving on from that, every year we do an ADA neighborhood ramp project where a certain amount of money is allotted in the budget, and we pick a neighborhood. And this started about 10 years ago, and I started down south. And when we come across areas that don't have ADA ramps, we use that money and put it out to contract and have a contractor put ramps in. So we were slowly moving our way from the south coming north. So that's a project we do in the wintertime, something on the slow season for contractors. And so that's going out here shortly. And then the last thing I had on here was the safe routes to school, and the fact that the process with Kennedy School, Kennedy School and then Cummings School, and that's just, Pat spoke on that and to be announced, and that's in the fold of things. We just don't know where we're at right now. So.
Mike, I have two questions. One, have all these been fully budgeted for?
They're all happening.
But not just happening, but like the amount of money for these projects is set and there's no change to the.
It's this year's budget.
What I'm getting at
Yeah.
is like these widening at the intersection project. So you make, every time you widen, of course, you make the crosswalk longer and put pedestrians at more risk. Is there any way of getting some type of pedestrian safety island or something in there, in the design that would not blow the budget and,
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Mike, I would suspect that he was talking about the last year on the budget committee, specific money was dedicated to doing those jobs.
Okay.
And that was done last June. So June to June's taken care of.
Okay.
Pretty much. So those projects, you could stop them and not spend the money, but you really can't add anything to them because.
Well, it might be like the thing like we talked about with McLeod, though. If we saw the design, we might have a.
Well, that was my next point, is like if we could start seeing these designs earlier
Well, I was just
on.
saying, my concern is the budgeting starts now.
Right.
And And so we need to be on top of things a lot earlier than I would like.
No, you're right, and that's.
So, and good point. So like you said, as we start preparing for next year's budget, the 1920 budget, and there are certain things that are coming up, and then you guys want to bring forward, and where does that money, where can we fit that in? Same thing with big projects that we're thinking of. I need to present to you guys and say, hey, we're thinking about this. You're like, oh, really? Well, how about, did you consider this? And then that talk has already happened. Now it's a little late in the game,
Yeah, the
I'll
horse
say.
is out of that stable for this. Okay. Well, thank you.
This does really speak very much to that NACTO versus ASHTO difference and how River Road in particular gets designed or widened, and the discussion of a safety island in the middle of it is something that ASHTO doesn't have and NACTO does.
And like safe routes to school too, because you're talking about Lock Haven to get to Gubser, and now you just you're gonna make it a wider intersection. Okay, police liaison report. If you were done, Mike, are you done? Okay.
So the only thing I have is our traffic safety unit is fully operational now. Still got some bugs to be working out. Obviously, little things keep popping up. But we have 3 guys on motorcycles. Hopefully everybody's seeing some presence with it over the last month.
Yeah.
It's almost Brooks. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And our new council rep, Dan, anything to
Thank you, Chairman de Blasi. Mayor Clark assigned me to this at the last minute, just a few days ago, so I'm really not Marlene, but you're stuck with me for a while, so.
Okay.
So there you go. Thank you for recognizing me tonight. There's just a couple of things. You talked about the bike path up on Ridge Road. The Little League Task Force has also been talking about that. I'm on that task force. The mayor assigned me to do that. And that's one of those things we've discussed. The line is a wide line there, so it is technically a bike path, but there really isn't much room there. So that is one of the things that will be discussed with that Little League complex.
We'd be more than happy to be a part of that discussion on that portion.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to come to the task force
That was
meetings.
the long, there's a parks board, and there's this long-range parks plan, what we're talking about, the long-range parks planning. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Kathy named that one too.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what they have to, I know it's long-range planning, but it's not in it.
Do you all want me to include you in the notifications of the meetings for the Keizer Little League? Or is there 1 or 2 of you who want to do it?
Well,
I
Probably
do.
should have, yeah, let's have one person.
And I'm interested in the bike portion.
Well, that's what I'm,
Yeah.
It's gonna be bike or whatever.
it's gonna be Ridge Road and access to the park.
It is one of those things we've been discussing.
Yeah. Well, and then, I think the Parks Board needs to discuss it also. But I think there's a lot of the same people on it.
There are some members on the Parks Board on that committee also.
I assume they're doing budgeting for next year already. Talking about the budget that they're
There you
gonna
go.
recommend.
There's been some talk about the budget.
Yeah.
One of the things that some members of the community came to me and asked about was the line of sight code. They said that there's a intersection at Harmony and Trail where they come to the stop sign off Harmony and there's big shrubs there and they can't see at all what's coming. And they wondered if if there was some code to that. And I don't know. I completed ignorance real easy. Nobody ever argues with me.
My experience is to call write it out or give it to Public Works. And in my experience, the problems have all disappeared.
Well, I think this is on private.
But I know, but usually it's a,
That'll go to code enforcement. If it's something easy we
Code
can take care of, and why send the letter and so on and so forth, Public Works will go out there and, do a quick job. But if it entails more or so on and so forth, that would be Ben Crosby with code enforcement, and then we take it.
what's his name?
Ben.
Ben,
Ben.
yeah.
Ben is very tactful
Yes.
in his approach, and yes, there is code. Both Michael and I have been on the planning commission, and yes, there is line of sight, but on private property, you know, Ben goes out and says, hey, you've got a little problem, could you, generally gets taken care of.
I would like them to clean the bike path, because they're, every fall, that right there gets full of leaves and gets, that's.
Is there a bike path or a
messy.
bike lane there?
It's a bike lane, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's,
The code that said the bike lanes have to be kept clear. If you can't do anything on your property that interferes with the traffic in the
Lanes.
bike lane or the auto traffic.
Any of the traffic lanes, and
So
the
you have
bike
to
lane
keep
is
your-
a traffic
your
lane.
leaves out of the-
You have to keep your leaves out of the bike lane.
yeah.
And they don't, we have the best street sweepers in the world, I've never seen
Yes.
anybody any better. But they won't go down a road that only has curbs on one side. So if you, like Keizer Road, there's a nice curb where the new apartment buildings are, but nowhere else. And so those, anytime you have a driveway that drags gravel and stuff up into the bike lane, I went and, I guess, filed a complaint with code enforcement saying that there's too much gravel on that bike lane and it's dangerous. So he wrote them a letter and they went out and swept them off. I mean, that's kind of trivial, but I suppose actually I did knock on the door and ask one person to do it. But other than that, yeah, they do. It works really well, my experience.
But I just wanted to say, it's good to see a full committee here tonight, and thank you for your time and efforts and being and volunteering with the city. I just had one other question. I was reading the notes from last month, and it said that this talked about a traffic calming device, and I'm not really sure what that is. Can somebody help me?
Mike?
Well, it could be anything. It could be anything from a speed bump to, say, bump out to the sidewalks. It could be, an
Narrowing.
island.
You know what he means by a bump out?
So.
I didn't know it. I had to go look it up after he said it the first time.
Like I say,
You know how people park on the street? There's people parked on both sides, just pretend there's people parked on both sides of the street. And then you have a corner but you extend the corner out
Like downtown.
As far as the cars stick
as
out.
far as the cars stick out. So your sidewalk doesn't end where they do now. They go out another 5 feet
I
on
see.
both sides.
Various
Which makes
kinds
it
of
a lot
design.
narrower at the intersection. Not really,
Less
but
distance.
looks like it's narrower at the intersection.
There's thousands of different possible ones, including just painting on the street.
Yeah.
White lines, that will slow people down. On Edgewater, they put trees along the way, and it appears to be narrower. That slows traffic. Traffic circles, not roundabouts, but traffic circles, like they have on Winter Street, calm traffic.
Like right in the middle of the intersection.
Right.
A 6-foot circle with an elm in it or something.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just looked at that and I thought, how are we calming cars?
And the old traffic bump.
Yes,
Right.
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, and as the new chair, I promise to get every meeting done before 11 o'clock at night.
Thank you very
Have
much.
any, but we won't have a quorum by then.
Okay, this meeting's adjourned.